Hello, Spindler Academy. Whoops. Hello, Spindler Academy. Hopefully this will be the first in a series of lectures on statistics, but this is just going to be the first one. And it's going to be on histograms, box plots, and the interquartile range. And this is brought to you by Spindler Academy. So to get the first stuff out of the way, what is an individual? An individual, in terms of data and like statistics, is the object that you're describing. And then what is a variable? A variable is any characteristic whose value may change for the individual. And you can have different types of variables. You can have a categorical variable, which means that it's like descriptive or qualitative. That would be like, I don't know, like colors or like it's descriptive. It's the opposite of a quantitative variable, which is numbered. So that would be like the number of whatever, but yeah. So those are kind of opposites. You can have a categorical variable or you can have a quantitative variable. And then what is a graph? A graph is just a pictorial representation or diagram that represents the data that you're looking at. And then a distribution is an arrangement of values of a variable and how often they occur. So when you're looking at a distribution, you can describe it in multiple ways, and some of these I've already covered. Like, for example, if you're describing the center of a distribution, you'd usually look at the mean or the median, and I discussed how to calculate those and the mode in a previous video. You can also talk about its spread, which just means like the range of the distribution, or its standard deviation, or its interquartile range, or the MAD, which I'm going to talk about, hopefully, standard deviation in a future video. And in this video we'll talk about IQR, and the MAD I already talked about in the last video. And then you can also talk about it in terms of its shape. So like, is it symmetric or is it skewed left or right? Basically, you have to look at the histogram, which I will explain in a moment, but I do want to explain that, oh, this diagram doesn't, okay, well, I guess I can add that, but I just want to make sure I'm getting it perfectly correct. So skew right is, yes, let's do insert text box. That one is skew right here. And then this one, I thought this diagram had these written, but I guess it doesn't. That one's skew left, which is kind of like, if you're looking at the data, like it looks like this would be the left one, but really skew is talking about the opposite of whichever. Like, this one is skew right and this one is skew left. I don't know how else to explain that, but let me double check that those are correct again, just to make sure I don't mess this up and then have to edit it out. Yeah, that's skew left. Okay. So then basically you have to look at the histogram, what is a histogram? So a histogram shows the distribution of quantitative data, and it shows the frequency of the values in the data, and then basically it has a bunch of bars. Each interval of values, or bin, also known as bin, is represented by a bar. So let's make this one a little bit bigger, and this one too, I guess. So, and this I got from Free Code Camp, these two images, and they were also explaining what a histogram was. But basically, if we're reading this graph or this histogram, it's the age of Nobel Prize winners, the frequency, and then their respective ages. And in this case, if you notice, it started with this graph, and then as you decrease the bin width size, then you get this graph. And basically you can better see the distribution with a smaller bin width in this case. So you can kind of see that at around age 60, and what would that be? That'd be like 58 or whatever. it's the highest, and you can't really tell. You can tell that it's 60 here, but you get a better view of it with, in this case, a smaller bin width. So then what is a box plot? A box plot is a graphical representation of the 5-number summary of the data. And what is a 5-number summary? Well, that includes the minimum, Q1, the median, Q3, and the max. And you should know what median is if you watched my other video. And I'm assuming you know what minimum and maximum are, because they're kind of in the words themselves. But then the first quartile is basically the median of the true median and the minimum. And then the third quartile is basically the median of the true median and the maximum. And I could go over how to calculate that, but it's essentially the same as calculating the median. And then when you do all those calculations, you get this 5-number summary, and then you plot it on a graph. Or on a graph. And so this, I think, is the same. Yeah, it's the same data, but it's just the 5-number summary plotted. So like the maximum was, what is that, like 98? And the minimum was like 19, I guess. And so you can kind of tell that. Yeah, you can tell that from here. And 19 and 98, yeah. So it is the same data. But it's a different look at the data. Oh, and then IQR, interquartile range, which I should probably talk about, is Q3 minus Q1. So this number minus this number. And that gives you the interquartile range. And then the range is just the max minus the min. So then, I wanted to give, okay. So some real world examples of histograms and box plots. Histograms and box plots, that's hard to say. I just am gonna steal this. Sorry, you're seeing my notes. Okay, so the first example of I mean, this one's kind of a histogram. It's basically a time plot, which just means that it involves time as opposed to, like in these ones, it involves age. So these are technically time plots, these two, and this one actually. But so they all involve time, which in the real world you're probably going to involve time. I mean, you don't have to, but the examples that I'm using here do. But it's kind of a histogram in that each bar represents views in this case, and these were brought from my other YouTube channel. So it's just over time, and then it's number. The x-axis represents time. The y-axis represents number of views in this one. In this one, the x-axis represents time or days, and I think the y-axis also represents views. Yeah. And then an example of a box plot used in the real world can be found in stocks. So the box plot is actually, if you look at each bar here, I don't know if I can make it much bigger, but they don't include the median, but you can see that it draws inspiration from the box plot, and then it also represents it over time. So I guess I don't know. You can see the spread. Is it spread? Yeah, you can see the spread of the data, which happens to be buying and selling of stocks. And then it's also spread out over time too. So yeah, sorry, this video was a little kind of random, but it's just stuff I want to get out of the way. Thank you for watching. Feel free to donate at spindleracademy.com by clicking donate over here, and you can see my Bitcoin address and my Doge address. So if you just send me those, that would be very much appreciated. And I hope that you have a good rest of your day. Thanks for watching. Bye.